It's never been easier to start a business or follow your passion, and frankly also make money online doing things. It's so much easier for young people to pursue a different path and frankly think about optionality in a different way.
Welcome to the Callum Johnson Show. Today I'm joined by Meagan Loyst. Meagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you. Okay, so to kick off, why don't you just kind of tell the people who you are, what you've been doing, what you're working on, all that good stuff. This episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show.
Great. So I'm the founder and CEO of Gen Z VCs, which is the largest and fastest growing community for Gen Z innovators globally. And so I put Gen Z founders, Gen Z investors, students, and operators all in that bucket. And so we have 25,000 members from 80 countries all over the world. It's become a much larger global movement around Gen Z empowerment when it comes to tech and venture capital and things like that. And we have a bunch of different initiatives that we've created to basically serve each of those different cohorts in the community to make tech venture more accessible to the next generation. So really focused on leveling the playing field through initiatives and action. We've got a marketplace where we've saved founders over $8 million on their startup stack. Many Gen Z founders are first-time founders, so it's something that's something that we're really passionate about. We facilitated 7,000 plus applications into tech and VC jobs. We've mentored 350 plus students from 110 universities all over the world. I did a VC course earlier this year where I taught 1,200 students live every week on the fundamentals of venture investing, the largest course on that platform's history in terms of a cohort. So there's a ton of interest in sort of entrepreneurship and investing, and Gen Z VCs is oftentimes that first sort of home when people are starting their journey, learning about investing or entrepreneurship and also ramping up. So most of our members are under the age of 26, which is sort of the max age of Gen Z. I am 26. And it's been really, really fun because I'm only full-time as of 6 months. So I was a full-time investor before, which is where I draw and leverage a lot of my insights from, where I was working and investing in companies all day, every day. And now I also do, as sort of they call me the queen of Gen Z VC, the voice of Gen Z. And I do a lot of consulting for Fortune 500 companies and startups on things like go-to-market, engagement, all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also a creator. So I have 70,000 followers on socials. I do influencer partnerships. I help companies create influencer partnerships. And I do a bunch of public speaking as well on all things Gen Z to talk about everything from climate and sustainability to leveraging AI and what's happening in the world from a business lens. So that was a bit long-winded, but that's me.
It's incredibly impressive.
Thank you.
Especially like, it feels like it's quite a short time. Because I even remember, seeing some of like your early tweets around Gen Z VC and how that even community started up. And that's really where I want to begin. Cool. Talk about those early moments. How did it come about? Because it was very organic. It was very kind of spontaneous.
Yeah, I never planned to be a founder or a community leader. I had been training to be like an investor since my freshman year of college in all ways. But when I started my job in VC, it was during the pandemic. I was 1 month into my job, 1 year out of school, and I didn't have a massive network of founders. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, so I didn't have like this giant network basically to tap into when it came to sourcing deals and really ramping up in venture. But what I did have going for me was the fact that I was the youngest person on my team by a decade. And even though I was still learning a lot about early stage investing, anytime there was a Gen Z founder coming in our doors or a company building for a Gen Z audience, my team would always ask me for my feedback and opinions because I was the voice of the customer. And so that became a repetitive pattern. And I started thinking, I was like, okay, if I'm the token Gen Z person at my fund, there have to be other Gen Z investors at other funds that are in the same exact position as me, starting their jobs during COVID, looking for friends and community. and ultimately like wanting to do a good job at their jobs, but not knowing how to because we're all investing during a pandemic and everything is online. And so I tweeted about it. At the time, I probably had 50 followers on Twitter. And I was just like, hey, like putting this out into the ether, any Gen Z investors out there investing in Gen Z companies? If so, I want to meet you, learn about your favorite trends, companies you're tracking. And that turned into 71 conversations with young investors all over the world. So this was the first time I really got outside my bubble. Like I went to Boston College, which is a school in Boston, of course, and I didn't have many international friends, but all of a sudden I went from like literally overnight meeting people in Switzerland, in Barcelona, in China, in Latin America, all doing the exact same job that I was, but in their specific space or area of the world. And so that article, I ended up turning those conversations into an article, which went immediately viral, which was crazy because it was like the first article that I wrote. And it was all just about elevating the Gen Z perspective. And I coined the term Gen Z VC. And from that, I basically learned like people did not realize that Gen Z was old enough to be doing investing. Like this is very much a trend that we are creating. And on the latter point, people are naturally interested in what young people are looking into and interested in from a trends perspective. And so that article turned into a community of just 30 of my friends from that article that were all like, hey, like I also don't have any friends in venture and I'm looking to meet people. And then that group of 30 ballooned into 1,000 in 4 days. I had my first cover on Business Insider. And now, again, fast forward a little over 2 years, we're 25,000 people. And it's truly become a movement, which is crazy. So I never really anticipated starting it. It happened really organically, but it's because we had almost immediate product market fit and we were solving for a very specific problem, which was young investors starting in their jobs, not knowing anyone, looking for friendship and also looking for deal flow. And I created it through this Slack group, but like really intimate conversations with every single person that I met through the article, knowing who would get along with who is based in the same city, and forming real friendships. Like we'll probably have people that like they're going to be bridesmaids in each other's wedding that came out of that initial group, which is so cool.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's interesting, like even hearing your story. I think we're in a really unique time where people are able to achieve certain things, have a certain level of impact at a way earlier stage than like really in history, right? Mm-hmm. Like even if I was to talk to my parents or my grandparents, there was kind of like a psychology of like, I need to pay my dues. I need to work for like 30, 40 years. Yeah. And maybe if everything goes well and I'm lucky and I get a few promotions, I'll be in like a stable point financially. I'll be able to have a good position in my job. And now, and I think it's really the power of the internet and like the leverage that the internet has created. You have people like Mr. Beast, for instance, who are like 24 and he's the most popular YouTuber and he's probably on course to be a billionaire. And even taking it away from there's creators who are making like 6-figure, 7-figure salaries at like 20 years old, 19 years old, owning companies. And I think it's when I listen to your story and even in my research, I found that like the way that you leverage the internet, the way that you're able to kind of create communities is unique. And it's built to this point where like you were able to create a movement based off a tweet, right?
It's crazy.
It is crazy. So I'm kind of just interested. Take me back to those early moments. Like what was your psychology at the time? And kind of how did you learn how to, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like things spiral. Like they get bigger and bigger and you're bringing people in. Like, how did you even learn that?
Yeah, I think I think the best community leaders are actually great like event planners, truthfully. So like I love organizing very curated dinner parties where I think about the seating, the details, what's going to make the experience really wonderful. And I think great community organizing is very similar where you have to just kind of listen to the people around you and focus on the details and focus on the people. Like that's who you're ultimately serving at the end of the day. So I remember even for that like initial Zoom call, which turned into the Slack group, which turned into the community and the movement, I really just thought about like I put together a list of all 30 people that were like, yes, I'd like to join a Zoom call and Slack group of all these other young investors. And I just thought about like, okay, who's going to get along with who? Who could be a good group leader for this conversation? And that was what prompted the organic sort of snowball effect where like, let's say of the 30, there was 6 groups of 5 people. Each of those people walked away with such amazing experiences that they felt compelled to tell their friends about it. I didn't have to say anything. I actually didn't even know at the time that the Slack group was set up in a way that would even allow people to invite other people. So initially I was a little concerned. I was like, oh no. I was like, what did I do? But then I was like, I really thought about why I even created the Slack group in the first place. And it was, oh, I wanted to, like, if this is a helpful resource for people, why should this be only accessible to the people that I met through this article? Like it should be open to anyone who's looking to learn about investing. And it really just, it happened so organically where people just started sharing it on Twitter. Now young investors all over the world they're a Gen Z VC in their bio. And I think there's been a real sort of mindset shift around that where historically, like in my first job out of college, my job was to send 100 plus cold emails a week to CEOs. I was in a full sourcing role and learned a lot, but also I had to act much older than I was to be taken seriously. And that really changed when I moved to early stage investing. And we've like, frankly, like all the stuff that we're doing, it flipped that mindset to say young people have a very valuable perspective around the table in boardrooms for founders. And that really contributed to the movement as well. But to your point and original question around, like what's happened and like, how is this even possible today and how does it snowball? It's never been easier to start a business or follow your passion and frankly also make money online doing things. It's also perpetuated, I think, in TikTok culture, even for example. Like I spend 15 to 20 hours a week on TikTok. I help companies think about TikTok. I love it. I love the platform. I learned so much from the platform. And more often than not, you're seeing like videos of, again, people like living very different lifestyles than what we were taught growing up is like, what is the workplace? What does being an adult look like? And I think when you see that messaging over and over and over again around work-life balance and what does it actually mean to be working in corporate America and what does it mean to own your own business and market that business on TikTok and own your life, own your freedom, it resonates very differently. And I think also the pandemic really put things into perspective for people. It's like, do I really want to spend 4 hours a day commuting back and forth into a job and spending all day away from my family and things like that? So I think it, between COVID, just general sort of how easy it is to sort of start a business online, it's just made it so much easier for young people to pursue a different path and frankly think about optionality in a different way. Right. So
yeah. No, I wanna get deeper into TikTok and the opportunities online and how people can kind of find their thing. But before we do that, you said something which I think is really powerful. And I remember this moment even in my own journey, which is you said that like even when you were working your first job, there was a point where you realized that you had like a valuable perspective. And I remember early in my career, especially in like corporate environments, you're kind of the young person who has you haven't done this before, so you don't really have a handle on what's going on. And I remember even like the internal voice for me being like, okay, just kind of keep quiet and like just do the thing. Like don't stand out too much. And I think it's powerful when you realize like, even if you are the youngest person in the room, there's a unique perspective in that. But I think there's usually like there's a trigger point or like a set of experiences that need to happen for that realization and for that mindset to take hold. So I'm curious for you, was there a moment, was there a person when it kind of clicked in your brain, you're like, okay, I have something valuable to contribute in these rooms?
I think one of the beautiful parts about being an investor, especially a generalist, is you get to see so many different types of companies across so many different sectors. And something that I think has been a theme throughout my life is I'm a Renaissance woman. Like it's really hard for me to focus on one thing. I love so many different things and I have very varied interests. And as an investor, I've been able to sort of take bits and pieces of my life and apply them as an investor. So like, for example, one of the portfolio companies I worked with at my previous fund, they were the largest podcasting network in Latin America. A fact about me is I love Spanish telenovelas. Like all of my favorite shows on Netflix, they are Spanish language content. I don't speak Spanish. I watch them all with subtitles. Chicas del Cable, Ministerios del Tiempo. Like I love them. And I never thought that that would be something that was actually valuable in my everyday life. It's something that's like fun and quirky about me, right? I only watch like foreign language dramas in my free time, but it ended up being actually an asset for like me in the workplace and serving as like the founder being like, we'd love to work with you. Like, you know, this space so well. And that was because of things that I was doing in my personal life. Same thing is like, there's a bunch of companies in the sports and athletic space. I played varsity soccer at 12 years old. I was a competitive freestyle mogul skier. Like sports was a really big part of my identity growing up. And I apply that in the same way. I've done, so in addition to like my Gen Z VC stuff, I mentioned I do consulting work. I've done like projects with UEFA, which they organize the Champions League in Europe, and you're obviously from the UK. And so you know them well. That's like, I never could have dreamed that would be something that I'd be doing with my life as an adult. But the fact that I played soccer, I understand the perspective as an athlete, and I can help them think about the next generation of athletes and fans is awesome. That's not something that I learned on the job after college. That's something that has been learned throughout my life through lived experiences. And I think that's something really important for younger people to realize when it comes to their careers is lean into the lived experiences that you have and don't think about what you need to have on your resume to be successful, because it'll surprise you.
Yeah. You know what's interesting actually when, and we can bring it to like the Gen Z point. Because I think especially like older generations, when they think of Gen Z, I think they kind of, I don't even know what the stereotypes are. It's like, I guess we're like a bit difficult. Like we kind of, we don't just get on with it. We like it to kind of suit us. I don't know. We want to be like creators. We want to do things differently. I've heard like lazy. I've heard soft. I've heard all these different
I've heard
things.
all the same.
All these different things. But even from like going to university and obviously being around my peers and friends, there's a lot of people in our generation that I almost feel like they're stuck in a sense, in that they want to maybe do something entrepreneurial, or not even entrepreneurial, just do something that suits them. I think the beautiful thing about kind of what you've described with your career is what you're working on, it's like suited to you. It's suited to like your background, what you were doing as a kid, like things that you have genuine interest. And so because of that, you're just able to bring more to it. But then I remember a bunch of my peers, and even for me, when I graduated from university, everyone's kind of looking at the same careers, right? And thinking, okay, like I'd have to be an investment banker or a strategy consultant, or maybe I'm a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. And it's like, how can I kind of get this to suit a bit more of what I'm like naturally? Like people are trying to fit themselves into these narrow roles. And so I think one of the most valuable things that you could kind of share with the audience is just the process of how someone can get to the point where like they're working on the things that are true to them. And maybe we can even start at the beginning. Like, how do you even figure out like what you should be working on and like where you could uniquely provide value?
Yeah, I think it comes from trial and error through lots of things. I've always been very, very professionally driven. My first internship was my junior year in high school at Citibank. It wasn't actually at the bank. It was it was where they repaired the ATMs. And it was a random summer program. They picked like, I grew up on Long Island, and they picked, I think, like 20 different students in public high schools across the island to like have a professional internship on your resume before you go to college. And I loved every bit of it. Yeah. And I also like, I worked at a law firm as well. So I like filed like medical malpractice cases. That was my first like real job. And I also volunteered like 100 hours at my local hospital. Like I really wanted to, before I even got to college, try a bunch of different career paths, and business was so clearly the one that was best suited for me, partially because I loved the outfits. But but I also just like, I loved this, like how strategic everything was. I got to sit in on boardrooms and like completed a project from start to finish and had like a real ownership mindset to everything that I did. And I was able to effectively be creative. Like they said, okay, here's a problem, go fix it and give us your best. Like I, put together a presentation for the summer, and I loved it. And that was when I kind of was like, okay, like business is going to be the thing. But then from there, I mean, you could do anything with a business degree. And my parents have been like working the same job since like for 20 years, right? So it's like I very much grew up with that same mentality where like I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to study business. I'm going to get a great job out of college, and I'm going to find my forever home and work there for 20 plus years and have my happily ever after, my 401k, whatever that looks like. And when I got to college, I was like, okay, business is my thing, but what within business even? And so I did, I think, something like 10 internships throughout like high school and college across every discipline. And you learn just as much about the things that you don't like as the things that you do like when you do an internship, which really helped kind of like push me in different directions. Like, so for example, that peer pressure you talked about, I remember my freshman summer, I did the Girls Who Invest program, which is amazing. Their whole mission is to have 30% of the world's assets managed by women by 2030. And you do 4 weeks of training at UPenn, a 6-week paid internship in asset management, and it's completely like free to like scholars, which is amazing. So it was the first year they did it. And I was at a hedge fund. And again, I was the only person I think under the age of 30 at the entire firm. So I had no peers. And I really wanted the big bank experience because at BC, that was the same messaging that was pushed. It was like, to be successful, you have to work at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or a big four accounting firm or one of the big consulting firms. And that's like, if you want to be in finance, that's what you have to do. So I was like, okay, like I want to be in finance. That's what I'm going to do. So I did JP Morgan's, they had a sophomore asset management internship, and they picked like 14 sophomores. You're doing the same work as the juniors, but you're getting that big bank experience. And again, I learned what I liked and I didn't like. And I'm not a very good cog in the wheel type of person. Like I have a very, I can't remember if it's left brain versus right brain, but I have like a very creative mindset in everything that I do. And a lot of that work was like sitting behind your desk all day, looking at Excel, doing like manual entry and things like that. And I really liked the more analytical side of investing, frankly, which drove me to like want to do private equity, growth equity, which is I started at General Atlantic right out of school. But I never could have planned for all this sort of side hustle, Gen Z VCs craziness. I never really could have planned for it. It really happened organically because I was pursuing my passions and thinking creatively. I think one of the best things you can do as a young person in your career is really be reflective on each experience, why you like it, why you don't, and what you can maximize and minimize in your future jobs. And every single decision I made, from one internship to the next internship, from one full-time job to the next full-time job, was so intentional. I love this song. I love Taylor Swift. There's a song that she has around, like, it's called Mastermind. I very much try to mastermind my life, where I'm like, okay, if I want to be here in 6 months, these are the things that I have to be doing today. But I'm only doing these things because I learned X, Y, and Z from this previous job. And so I'm very, very intentional and thoughtful about decisions. And I really try not to let peer pressure sort of force me in any one given direction. And I think you need to be honest with yourself when you're making those really big career decisions versus going with what everyone's telling you to do, which is the banking, the consulting, the finance, whatever. I've realized through all of my internships and full-time experiences that I'm much better doing portfolio work, strategy with portfolio companies than doing like deep financial model type of stuff. Which is, so I'm like, okay, like if I want to be an investor, I should probably be moving earlier stage because I'll get to do a lot more of that work with early stage founders versus the later you go, the more data there is to work with and the more time you'll be spending on like the fundamentals and the financials. So you learn something from every single experience, and you just have to reflect and be honest with yourself so you can give yourself the creativity and space to pursue the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah. It's interesting actually. So I think we have that in common. And it's interesting for me, like even when I made the decision to leave my job, and I remember even telling people at the company I was at that I wanted to start like a media company. I wanted to grow this podcast. And I was like, I want to work on this for years, like decades. And I remember one of the things, one of my managers even said to me, she was like, it's very rare that someone knows that. like that like this is what I want to work on, like this is going to be my long-term mission.
Yeah.
There's people that are even in their 40s and 50s who still don't have that clarity. And I really like the framework that you gave, because I hear it a lot. Like, how do I find the thing I'm meant to work on? Or I don't even my younger sister, like she's 15 now. So she's starting to think about like what she wants to do at university, where she wants to work. And that's the age where you start getting those questions of like, oh, like, what do you want to be? Like, where are you going to go to college? And there's like, there's a pressure to like have an answer. And I think the mistake that I see is that people try and start with like looking out into the world and thinking what career they sounds cool. And I think that's where the peer pressure comes in. That's when you start looking at what other people are doing. And the thing I like about what you said, it's kind of actually a journey of like understanding yourself first. And the experiences and the internships and the jobs, that is all just to give you like data so that you can start to see, okay, I really thrived in this situation. This, I was completely out of my depth. This, I really like this. Maybe because I was like, the teamwork aspect related to I was playing sports when I was younger. We all have like our own individual story. And then I like the second piece to what you said, which is like, okay, so once you have the experiences, you also need to reflect on it so that you can get the clarity and start to see the patterns. I'm curious to go a bit deeper into that reflection period. What exactly, like how active is it? Is it like, I don't know, you're just, are you literally like sitting down, notepad, paper, pen, and like writing this out? Is it like conversations with family or mentors? Like, what is even the process of someone getting that clarity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love to write.
Yeah.
I like basically, and a lot of my writing is like tends to go viral and does well. But it's because I really enjoy it and I put a lot of thought into it. This surprises people, but I'm actually more introverted than I am extroverted. Like I do my best thinking when I'm like alone for weeks at a time and can just write and frankly reflect. So something that I've done for like basically every job that I've done, every internship, is I keep an assurance document with every single thing that I have done that has been of value to XYZ company. And I almost categorize it in my brain. Did I enjoy this? Did I not enjoy this? And I consider all of those different things when I think about making a move and what types of career paths will be aligned with that. I also leverage that to create materials when it comes time for promotion and salary increases and advocating for myself internally. So I think it's really important to keep like a very detailed documentation of the things that you're doing, the way that you're learning and growing. Because it's interesting. Like I'll look back at a document that I created my freshman year of college and the things that I had questions about that I was doing deep dives into versus the things that I'm doing deep dives into now. It's very, very different. And you can really see just even the growth and the things that I'm doing and the ways that I'm contributing. So for me, it's all really written based, and just because I feel like everyone's brains, right? They're so convoluted. There's so much stuff that's going on up there. Giving myself the time and space to actually sort of organize my thoughts into something that's coherent that I can like look at and reflect on is really important. And it's also a really useful tool for any type of sort of career conversations that you're having with your employers, with yourself, with your family. So I tend to really gravitate towards just writing things down and organizing my thoughts for everything, whether it's like my formal written deep dives that I do every other week for my newsletter, for a market map that I'm creating on a space that I want to invest in. It all centers around really thoughtful clarity when it comes to written content, which is all just the things up here that I just like kind of put pen to paper.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think one of the things I've been thinking about, who was I listening to? Oh, I was listening to an interview with Big Sean, the rapper. He was talking to Jay Shetty, and Jay Shetty asked him, he said, now that you're wealthy, because obviously Big Sean grew up in like Detroit. He was like, now that you're wealthy, what's one thing that like your mindset has changed now having money versus not having money? And what he said was really interesting. He said, when I didn't have money, I thought it was all about like hard work. He's like, even seeing my mum growing up, she was working all the time, like round the clock. Now I would say like the wealthiest people I know actually work like some of the least. And the reason why is that like it's almost like I feel like precision, like being precise, knowing where you're going, like focusing on the right things, and being intentional can actually jump you like years ahead in your progress. And that's why like even these people, when you do see someone who's achieved a lot pretty early, I think it's because they've been like pretty precise. Like they're working on something which naturally fits into their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously their learning curve is way quicker. Things happen a lot faster. And of course, like you need to work hard as well. I don't want to make the audience think you just like, I don't know, work like 20 minutes a day, but it's the right thing and you get the success that you want. But that's the key to the reflection, which is it's making you more precise. You're not wasting as much energy working on something that it doesn't really do anything for you. You don't really enjoy it. One thing I'm interested to know, and let's just continue the path, which is like step one, I guess, is just get out there and get the experiences. Step two is to really reflect and to be intentional. And I loved what you said about writing and like documenting that process. Mm-hmm. Once you're starting to get a bit of clarity, maybe you've worked for a few years and you're like, okay, I kind of like this job, I don't like this. One of the things you even said in your article was like a lot of people in our generation, in Gen Z, they're not living to work. Like
Gen Z doesn't dream of labor.
Yeah.
I love that saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to work on something that is meaningful, that feels true to you, that feels unique to you. So once you've started gathering this data and you're getting a bit of clarity, what is the next piece? Because when I reflect and when I listen to your story, it sounds like your career is very suited to you. So how does, I don't know, someone who's listening, how do they start to build that career that's suited to them?
I think it's not so, I don't think it's as simple as, okay, like I know what I want to do. Now I'm going to take a giant leap and pursue it with all of my being. Like I feel like historically, like again, like I think about like my family and like this broader insight that I had on life was like, okay, I'm going to find a great job, a steady job, work in that job, retire. And like, that's going to be my life because that's what my parents did. And, that ended up not being the case for me, but I still had that mindset in the back of my mind where it's like, okay, like I'm supposed to be having a paycheck every month. And that's like something that I should be thinking about. And so I had been building Gen Z VCs part-time, weekends, evenings for 2 years before I went full-time. And so I think the lesson there is like, you don't have to wait to start experimenting and start leaning into those things and figuring out what you are interested in. You can do it on the weekends. You can do it in the evenings. To your point, it's going to take hard work. It's going to take time out of your day. But I really enjoyed doing it. And so it didn't feel like work. And I think that's a saying that a lot of people use. It's like, right, if it doesn't feel like work, I can't remember the saying, but like it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anything would have mapped out the way that they had if I had just said, okay, I'm going to start a community for young entrepreneurs and VCs, and I'm just going to go build it. Because for me, what brought the authenticity to that problem was the fact that I was a VC doing the job. So I understood it from that perspective. And so whatever you're thinking of doing, like, can you do it part-time in your free time to start and see where that leads? And I was able to leave, like, and for Gen Z VCs, monetization is not the top focus. Like everything that we do is centered around impact. All of our initiatives are free to members except for the course. We charged $5 initially for 10 plus hours of content. So it's like very, very affordable. But nearly everything in the on the platform that we offer is free because our mission is around accessibility and impact. And what that means is that for me to be able to leave my full-time job, my sort of cushy finance job, to pursue Gen Z VCs full-time, I had to make money doing something else. And so like, as my profile grew as an influencer, as a voice, as a creator, as a consultant, I was able to make money doing other things, which gave me the comfort to be able to leave my full-time job and supplement that income. So like, it's not necessarily going to be like an instant reality where it's like, okay, like I have all my savings and I'm going to just do this. Not everyone is going to have that same level of risk appetite. I certainly didn't. I was able to make the jump when I started to sort of see the other side, where I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to make money doing public speaking. I'm starting to make money doing consulting for big companies. Oh, and by the way, I like it. And I'm learning different things than I am during my day job. Because frankly, like I like to think that I'm building a portfolio career. I have 4 or 5 different jobs in any given day, and I'm learning very different things that I was learning in my previous job. And what that means is I'm having like my month to month, my day to day looks very, very different. It also means that I'm monetizing as a creator, which means every month looks different. And you have to be comfortable with that mindset. And so I think the TLDR is just like, if you're interested in something, start playing around and experimenting. You don't have to do it full time to like make it a reality. And do it on your own terms, right? Like I made the jump when it made the most sense for me, not because of any external pressures. And I, like I spent a lot of time over 2 years sort of qualifying the idea in my mind to be able to do it full time. So that was what makes sense for me, but it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. You know what, that's interesting. And I'm happy you brought up the like even the money making piece, because there's just like a reality to life, right? And I think it's funny. I think that the saying that you were getting at is like doing work that you would do for free, kind of like you wouldn't need to be paid. You're just happy to do it, and which is awesome. Like it's what I found with this podcast. But the other side to it is, because you enjoy doing it so much and it's so personally meaningful to you, it's easy to never get in the mindset of like, okay, like how do I actually make revenue? Like how do I make money from this? And that's the reality, right? It's like if you want to do any career and you're supporting yourself, you want to do a career and spend a lot of time doing it, you also kind of need to figure out, how am I going to bring in income? And so I'm curious if that was that a difficult process for you? Like thinking about like, okay, how can I start to generate revenue? Maybe you can just explain it. Like how was that process? And like,
it happened organically.
Yeah.
Content is what opened every single door for me when it came to that department. So I had like, we've talked about this, but I had I locked myself in a room basically last December, not this December of 2021, when all the metaverse stuff was going crazy. And I decided to write a 26-page manifesto, which this was like at the height of the market when everyone was thinking about the metaverse. And that article was read by millions of people and thus created a lot of amazing opportunities for me as like a thought leader on specifically Gen Z in the metaverse. So not as much the Web3 stuff, some of that, but just like how to think about Roblox and Fortnite and where Gen Z is spending time online, which, okay, now it has a new name. It's called the metaverse, but there's a lot of underlying trends there. And so like that in and of itself created so many different types of speaking opportunities for me. Like there was one last summer that was really cool where like I got like flown out to Utah to speak to, it was like a bunch of Fortune 500 CMOs. And like I was like 24, 25. Like it was a crazy experience, and content opened that door for me. And it has continued to do that. So even like I wrote a viral article a couple weeks ago on the viral rise of paid communities, and that has led to paid opportunities for me. So, and I know what I'm good at, right? And that's been like a theme of sort of my life. Like I know that I do written content, especially long form content, really, really well, which I don't get paid to do, but it's my top of funnel for those paid opportunities. And so I invest in it every other weekend. I like sit down for a day, 2 days, and I write, I create market maps, and I just put my thoughts out into the world and hope for the best. Not everything is going to be successful, but it tends to open doors. And I focus on the things that I care about. So like the reason I'm the voice of Gen Z and whatnot is because I've like really gone deep on Gen Z as like something that I care about from an authentic lens consistently for like 2.5 years, which has opened up doors, because I think this is something really important when it comes to personal branding. Like if you're building for everyone, you're not building for anyone. Like it's going to be really hard for people to think of like something keeping you top of mind. And so because I've been so thoughtful and intentional about building my brand around sort of Gen Z insights and like the power of Gen Z in entrepreneurship, investing in general, I'm the first person that comes up when you Google that stuff, when people are talking to friends, when speakers are talking about conferences that they're doing. I got to speak in Singapore last November, which was like crazy. It was like a paid speaking opportunity. I'd never been there for work before, and it was a crazy experience. But you get enough of that type of stuff happening, or like it got to that point. Like last November, this is like when I decided to leave my job. I had like that big paid speaking opportunity. I was doing a larger paid consulting project with FIFA and also the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program. None of those had anything to do with my investing job, but I loved them. I was getting paid to do each of those things. And I was like, this is what I want to be really maximizing moving forward. And if that's not something that I'm going to get from my day job, then maybe it's time to think about a new day job. And I can always come back to investing. I think that's the great thing about like building a career as an investor and also building varied skill sets is like once you kind of build the competencies, you can always come back with new insights. Like I'm an operator, I'm a founder now, and I think about problems from a different lens than I did 6 months ago as an investor. And I can help founders in a different way. And so if anything, I'm just becoming more well-rounded, and I would say even more dangerous in the way that I can sort of like really, really plug in and be helpful.
Nice. No, it's very cool how you have such like an awareness of like what your thing is, of like what you're good at, of where you uniquely add value. And I even like this fact you said like dangerous, because I think once you start to understand that and you can execute it, you do start to become dangerous. Okay, you know what? I wanna make it so actionable for people. Like I want people to listen to this and start to even feel the threads and like see the threads in their own mind of like, okay, maybe I could start to focus on this and like build my personal brand around this thing. I thought the model you outlined is an interesting one, which is like I love writing. I write these really long form pieces. Some of them go viral. That's like the top of funnel awareness. And then that draws interest into like some of like my services and like my unique knowledge.
Yep.
I think Naval calls it specific knowledge.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you have like how do you think about virality? Like even when you're like starting to write these articles, do you have anything like what is your process? Is it literally just like, okay, this is interesting, I'm going to start writing? Or I'm assuming there must be some like deeper thinking to it, like, okay, I kind of see there's a bit of buzz here, and you know what, let me not even speak too much to it.
Yeah.
What is your thinking on virality?
It's funny. It's like I think there's it's twofold. The first thing is sometimes the things that go viral are things that you would never expect to actually go viral. Like I remember I did like sometimes I just post about like pop culture things that are happening on LinkedIn. I did a post about Blackpink after Coachella and like the stats and the underlying trends, like the rise of K-pop and live streaming and what's happening with the Eras tour. That post took me like 10 minutes and it wasn't like something that I'd planned out, and that went viral on LinkedIn and like hundreds of thousands of people saw it. Same thing with the Oscars. I did something similar. Like, so there's that piece where it's just like, oh, you're seeing something happening. You feel like you have an interesting perspective that people aren't talking about, and you just put it out into the ether and hope for the best. The flip side is, again, being sort of like, I think something that I say a lot, and I work with a lot of companies and brands on sort of like building your brand, thinking about social media. I tend to think in impressions, and it's a disease. Like everything that I'm doing, I'm like, okay, like this should be the hook. This should be the thing that I'm thinking about. Like this would do well. These are the things that I should be implementing. And so like, I'll give you a really good example. So with the AI craze that was happening, like again, similar time frame, like over Christmas break, coming back from the holidays, I was again sitting in my room reading all these articles about AI and thinking like, okay, like everyone's thinking about AI. I want to write something about AI, but I want to do something about AI that like maybe could go viral or have some interesting different component that people aren't doing. So I thought to myself, I was like, okay, I've used ChatGPT, I've used DALL-E 2 before. Like, how quickly could I write like a book using these two things and it wasn't like I want to create a book. It was like, I want to see how quickly I can actually do it. Like, how powerful is the technology when I use it? And so I did that. It took me 2 full hours, like couple prompts in ChatGPT, couple prompts in DALL-E 2, and even just like putting everything together in Canva, self-published on Amazon, and I pitched at Business Insider. Like, I was like, hey, like everyone's talking about AI. I think this is actually like a really amazing educational use case. And I think it'll do well in socials. And also I think it's like a really cool way to leverage and use AI that people aren't doing. And lo and behold, that post went viral. I had a bunch of people reach out that were building in AI, learning about AI, using that book to read to their kids. And it's like basically leveraging AI to teach young children about AI and what it is and how it works, all created by AI. So like that was a perfect example where like I kind of just like, I was reading stuff and I was like, let me just see if I could do something here and pitch it. And it worked.
Yeah.
And so like I truly think in impressions in everything. Every time I'm seeing something, I'm writing something down, but sometimes you can't plan for virality. Like there was a post that's doing really well on socials right now that I wrote about Enterprise Ireland, which is like the investing arm of the Irish government. It's the second most active investor, I think, in Europe. Like crazy. That just like I had a conversation with a new friend. His name is Connor. He works at Brex and he's Irish. He was like, we have the best infrastructure in Ireland to like support young entrepreneurs. It's amazing. You should look into it. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I feel like this actually applies to like the debt ceiling conversations that are happening right now in the US. And like, what if the US invested in these companies? And like, I never expected that to like do well on socials, but it did. Like you can't really plan for it. And this is why I think like consistent content, putting it out into the world is really important. Keeping yourself accountable, because you just never know what's going to go viral, but you can plan for success, which I try to do.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And the thing that stands out as well is like you're paying attention as well, and like you're seeing threads and different things from different worlds and kind of like bringing it together. I'm curious to get like the other side to it, and maybe we can end with this, which is you've experienced like you can even speak to it. I'm sure like some of what you've built and the impact to it must seem like crazy, even when you have like the articles that go viral, even when you're giving some of the names of like companies that you're consulting with or working with. It's like there must be certain moments where it's like, wow, they want to work with me. Like it's a crazy like accomplishment. And I'm sure to you, it doesn't feel like you've put a ton of work in. But to a lot of people, it'd be like, it's so early as well. I'm curious just to get an insight into like the other side of that success and like the progression. What would you say is the other side? Do you have like moments where, I don't know, you're kind of like disillusioned, or
Everyone
just
does.
moments of doubt even that you can like execute? There must be like a pressure that comes with what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think like, especially when you're going on down an uncharted path, I think it's very easy. Like, I think entrepreneurship in general can be very lonely. And so like, I'm now the one that's keeping myself accountable on all things. I don't have a boss anymore that's telling me I have to do X, Y, and Z to be successful and what my metrics are. I'm creating my own metrics for success. And when I'm not meeting said metrics, like I'm the one that's putting myself down. You know what I mean? So, and also again, when you're writing your own playbook, some things are just not going to pan out the way that you expected. And it's just really important to, again, reflect on the things that are working well and knowing that things come in cycles. Like I think I experienced this as a creator actually a lot, where like, you know, I remember for my newsletter, this is a great example. When I launched my newsletter, I wrote my first like deep dive on the music industry. Again, I mentioned I love Taylor Swift. It was like this whole deep dive on like different technology in the music industry, what's broken with the fan experience. And I like poured my heart and soul into that newsletter. And it got like maybe 30 likes on LinkedIn. I was like, oh God, but like, what did I do wrong? And I was really disappointed about it. But again, and it took 9 newsletters for one to like really pop off and go viral, which was the viral communities one. And that's just like, you have to know that like, if you put in the work, good things will come, even if you don't expect it. And also just like, I think I tend to be a little bit of a yes man. in that I am just very open to opportunity and being very intentional about like what I'm saying yes to. But like, you just never know where one conversation could lead. And like even the UEFA stuff, like I remember it was a tiny speaking gig here in New York, a virtual one that they had attended. It wasn't a paid opportunity. They reached out and they were like, we want to meet Meagan. Like, she's awesome. And she's thinking about all the right things that we're thinking about. And I've like, so if I hadn't said yes to that on like, you know, it wouldn't have led to all the amazing work that I've done with them since, and multiple trips to Geneva, like really cool stuff. And, you know, I think especially in investing, you've good days and you have bad days. You have strong periods and dry periods where it's like you might go a month where you're meeting founder after founder after founder, and like either your deals are getting turned down internally by your team. Like there's a lot of like just like you just have to kind of like keep yourself going to keep it up. And now I'm sort of the sole person that is sort of playing all those different roles. So it's just really important to reflect on sort of where you've come from, where you're going, and keeping positive and staying consistent with what you're doing. Because you just never know what's around the corner. I tend to take a more opportunistic and positive outlook on sort of the future.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's been amazing having you on, and I love the fact that we were able to like show like the successes and what you've achieved, and really kind of go deep into how you did it. But then also, I think the other side is important, which is like I think it's easy to look at someone else and be like, everything they're doing is working. Every piece of content they put out blows up. And I think social media in general, it's very good at showing you the successes, the wins that people have. And even like with my own business at the moment, a lot of the times it's things not working. It's actually, the wins are actually kind of few and far between. And a lot of athletes even talk about it. It's like, when you're losing, like people only really remember the big win. Like most, I don't know, even if you looked at like the NBA, like what's the average lifespan of an athlete? Like even LeBron's been in the league 20 years. He's won the ring 4 times. So 16
like
times.
VCs too, right? Where it's like you could have a portfolio of 60 companies, 59 of them fail, and you invest in Uber at the seed, and it returns your fund 500x, and you're a great investor. Like I think about that all the time when it comes to just like the barbell of what success looks like. And of course, not every industry is venture capital, but sometimes all it takes is one meeting, one company, one thing that you believe in to find that success, whatever that looks like. So I do think about that a lot too. Like you have to see a lot of failure sometimes to find success.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love that as something to end on. Meagan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.